Just got home from my first regional of the season. How did it go? Hey guys, Otaka here, back with another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video, and I'm tired. I just got back from a regional just yesterday, and it didn't go well. So for those who have been following along on the channel, I have been just trying at the bare minimum to get my invite. I just want to, at the current moment, prove that I am capable of doing it, but then I also feel like I just cannot give proper advice on how to make optimal plays or how to deck build if I can't even get my invite. Unfortunately, this regional was no different. Still no invite. I'm not going to give a full play-by-play on every single game that I played at this regional. I'm just going to really talk about the losses and like even some of the stuff I just learned at this regional about my deck, and then of course we'll give a deck profile at the end of the video. To start, this took place in Bainbridge, Georgia, and if you were watching the last Bainbridge, Georgia regional, it was a small regional. This one was no different. There were a few more people than last time. Last time it was like 80-something people. This was like 106, which was just enough to make it so that instead of top 8, it was top 16. And for those who are watching the last Bainbridge regional video, I got 9th out of top 8, so I barely missed the mark. And I got 32nd at this regional, so if it was top 32, I would have gotten my invite. That being said, 2 out of the 3 losses were actually avoidable, and I just whiffed, so I will just admit that here and there. I think owning up to your own mistakes and being able to acknowledge what you could have done better is part of growing at this game. So like I said, we are going to talk about the losses. Out of 7 rounds, I lost round 2, 6, and 7. And going into this regional, I was expecting Snake Eyes, Tenpai, and Yubel. However, I only played Tenpai and Yubel for the whole regional minus round 7. To give a quick breakdown, and I had to write it down because I knew I was going to forget, round 1, I went against Tenpai. Round 2, I went against Tenpai. Round 3, I went against Yubel. Round 4, I went against Tenpai, Snake Eye. Round 5, I went against Yubel. Round 6, I went against Tenpai, and round 7, I went against Branded. Me, on the other hand, as I'm sure you probably have already figured out, I was playing Chimera Fiendsmith. And funny enough, I navigated pretty well through most Tenpai boards and most Yubel boards to clutch out quite a few wins. The 2 Yubel players I went against, I won against, and I believe I beat 2 Tenpai players. But let's talk about the losses. Round 2, like I said, was the first loss I took, and it was against Tenpai. I was at table 4 for this one. So I was already in the top tables by round 2, and needless to say, I was a little nervous, but I didn't let it get to me. Tenpai runs D-Shifter, and whether they run it in the side or the main is debatable on the player, but I kind of figured since they had taken 2 Pot of Prosperities and 2 field spells away from the deck, they were most likely running D-Shifter in the main deck now. And going into this regional, I knew Shifter was a big threat against my deck. For those who don't know how Chimera works, pretty much the deck needs to hit the graveyard. It's not a super graveyard-focused deck, but a lot of the effects that allow you to play the game result in monsters being used as fusion material and hitting the graveyard specifically. And currently there are 2 decks in the format running D-Shifter very heavily, and that is Tenpai and Ritual Beasts. So pretty much the game plan, if I got hit with Shifter, was to slap Chaos Angel on board and hope it hits and stays. But I win the die roll. Game 1, I go draw phase, Shifter. Standby phase, Molcharmy Perulia. Cool. Sure enough, I have the ability to make the Chaos Angel, so I go Inherent Summon of the Knightmare Apprentice, go Effect, he imperms it. Sure. I then normal summon Edge Imp Chain. I do not have the ability to make the Light and Dark Chaos Angel because he impermed the Knightmare Apprentice. I just make a pure Dark. However, by doing this, he got 2 draws, so wonderful. So I have a Chaos Angel on board that is just a dark one, which means it can't be destroyed by battle. And that's it. His turn. Standby main. Raigeki. I scoop it up, go game 2. Even if I made the Light and Dark Chaos Angel, he told me he top decked Raigeki for turn, so I was fucked regardless. Game 2, I go first. Draw phase. Shifter. Standby phase, no Perulia this time, so that was great. I proceed to make the Light and Dark Chaos Angel this time, and it kind of stuck. So my opponent was actually expecting me to make him go first, so he sided in Heatwave, and he started his turn off with Heatwave and passed. I proceed to just draw for turn, hit him for 35 with Chaos Angel, and pass to him. He then still really doesn't have full combo, so he just normal summons Genroku, attempts effect, I ash it, and then he just sets 1 and passes. I then go to my turn, and the game plan is just kind of try and kill him. He activates the set Kaiman, which he adds Genroku, activate effect to special to Genroku. He activates that effect to special to Fadra to revive a Chandra that got into the grave somehow. I can't remember how it got there. And then he proceeds to just let me try and take my turn. I, crazy enough, don't have a way to out the Chandra and the Fadra, and so I pass, and he just kind of kills me from there. In this game, I did learn that Samurai Destroyer is not an activated effect, so if he attacks Samurai Destroyer into the Chaos Angel, he can negate Chaos Angel, further making Chaos Angel vulnerable, so Chaos Angel isn't even a good answer against Tenpai, which further just makes me think, how the fuck do I play against this deck if Shifter hits the board? So yeah, got 2-0'd in round 2 by essentially Shifter. If I could have actually played the game, it might have actually been more fair, and the proof of that is that further Tenpai players I played against, they were more fair games. Moving to round 6, which was my next loss. I made it all the way to round 6 being X1. I was feeling very confident in this, and sure enough, I lose the die roll and he says, "You're going first." And I'm like, great, my 4th Tenpai player of the day. Sure enough, I go first and no Shifter draw phase, which would have been the first Tenpai player to not activate Shifter in the draw phase all day. That being said, he does hit me with every hand trap in the book, and then I pass. He summons Pydra. I scoop. Game 2, I actually ended up winning. I set up a very substantial board where I had Highwave King Caesar on the board, Muckraker in the EMZ, and Diabells in the graveyard, which I revived from the graveyard, and a Baphomet Fusion on the board, so that way Kotal and Sword Knight were live. I was able to essentially just kind of out his whole hand, because he also activated Imperm and Veiler on my turn. I was able to dodge both of them, and so I further punished him by ripping another card out of his hand. He only had 3 cards in hand starting his turn, so we were able to just kind of out-resource and prevent him from playing the game. Game 3, I kind of suspected he was going to choose to go first, and so I didn't side heavily into like going first cards, but I also sided with the idea that maybe he still makes me go first. So I put in droplets and I put in talents just in case, you know, he makes me go first still. That way talents can punish any hand traps that hit me, but also droplet is there for any sort of shenanigans where he decides to go first. Sure enough, he decides to go first. He makes seals, sets 2, passes. And this is where I whiffed. I could have won this game super easily. His back row, obviously I didn't know this at the time, but I had suspicions. One of them was Imperm and the other one was Kaiman, and I ended up being right. And I had Called By in hand for the seals. I could have 100% won this game based on what my hand was. He only had 2 cards in hand which were not live, and he had 2 cards that I could play around. I proceeded to normal summon Gazelle. Gazelle effect, he chained seals, and I chained Called By, to which he chains Imperm, target Gazelle, and I chain Chimera Fusion. I then proceed to dodge the Imperm, stop the seals from resolving its effect, and play the game. How I did not win here is like beyond me, but I somehow managed to not have enough damage on board. Obviously, this is on me. He had a completely open board. He had a Kaiman that he added Chandra off of instead of Genroku, which I think Genroku would have just prevented me from winning the game if I was not stupid. But all in all, I ended up in a scenario where I needed to get the Engraver out of grave to get enough damage on board. However, I didn't have another Light Fiend in the graveyard, and the one Light Fiend I did have was on the board. Problem is that I locked myself into fusion monsters with the Baphomet effect, meaning that I couldn't just link away the Light Fiend, and I had no fusion spell to fuse it away. So I had no way to get this Light Fiend into the graveyard, which was a dusted gold. So I was in a predicament. Unfortunately, the scenario was I left him with 1,100 life points. No way to get those 1,100 life points out of him, and like I said, he added Chandra off of Kaiman, so he had the crackback. Unlike round 2, where I do think there wasn't much I could have done, Shifter is a huge hit to the deck, and Tenpai has an answer for my only answer to Shifter, so it hurt a lot. Round 6 was completely avoidable, and it was 100% within my capabilities of winning the game because I had the out for his best card on the field, which was Seals. So unfortunately, I ended up whiffing round 6. The player did admit to me that I was the only person there that actually managed to get a single win off of him. So that was that. That was kind of cool, I guess. He ended up winning the whole event, so again, that was pretty cool. But hey, I'm X2, and the guy that beat me is still in the top tables, so I can still clutch this out with top 16 to get my invite. Unfortunately, I ended up losing round 7 as well, and what better way to be done in by my own deck, Branded. Funny enough, I actually ended up meeting this guy earlier in the event. He had the exact same Pearly mat as me. We both got it from our significant others. His name was also Tyler. It was practically fate. Game 1, I win the die roll, so I go first. And despite knowing that I'm going against Branded, I funny enough, did not build a board to out Branded. I set up a pretty okay board. The problem being is that I just didn't have like the greatest of hands. I opened double Baphomet, a Poly, I believe a Chimera Fusion, and an Imperm, so it wasn't like the best. That being said, it was still somewhat playable, so I ended up making an end board with like the Baphomet Fusion, Muckraker, and then I was still able to get Diabells onto the board. Unfortunately for me, my end board was not enough to stop a normal summon Albaz effect. Due to the hand that I had, I wasn't able to get the Mirror Sword Knight into the graveyard, so he was able to just fuse away the Diabells and then proceed to play from there. So we went game 2. Game 2, I go first. I set up a lot better board, and Diabells was enough for him to go game 3. Game 3, he goes first, and wouldn't you know it, my hand is dog water. I played Branded enough to know how to break the board. I've played Chimera enough to know how to play into Branded boards. But my hand was not having it. My hand was Spooky Dogwood because the idea was that I was going to basically floodgate him, essentially. I was going to either let him keep playing Branded Fusion monsters and give me a lot of life points, or I was just going to win in time, which we still had 15 minutes on the clock, so that last one was not likely. But the rest of the hand was 2 Polymerization, which I only run 2, 1 Patchwork, and 1 Chimera Fusion. You noticing the problem here? He ends up activating Branded Lost from his hand, and he activates Branded Fusion, to which I just chain Dogwood. He only ends up making Lubellion and then into Mirror Jade, and he doesn't make anything after that, so he passes. I end up getting like 5,500 life points, so that was pretty cool. From here, I proceed to top deck Forbidden Droplet. Where's my monsters? I set 3 cards, all of which are bluffs, and I pass. He draws a card, he just hits me with Mirror Jade, passes. So I think he's bricked. I top deck Gazelle, I normal summon Gazelle, activate effect, and he activates Mercurier from hand. I proceed just to scoop it up at this point. After I lost, I looked at the top 4 cards on my deck. I would not have seen another playable card for 5 turns. My deck was 100% rooting for my opponent. The worst part of it all is that, unfortunately, even though he beat me and he went X2 in the event, he did not have good enough tiebreakers to clutch it out for his infight. So even though he beat me, we were both losers at this event. So the question here is where could I have played better? Round 2, I could not have played better. Unfortunately, Shifter is just Shifter. So realistically, I need to find a better answer to Shifter for Tempai specifically. If Ritual Beast hit me with Shifter, I would have a better chance because Chaos Angel is a hard card for them to out. But unfortunately, Tempai has Samurai Destroyer, which is not an activated effect, so they have an answer for my answer. Round 6, I could have played better just by looking for a combo that could have actually put enough damage on board. He had no answer for if I did get enough damage on board, because Kaiman, he searched Chandra, which wasn't going to help him that turn. So that's my fault. I just did not find the line for enough damage on board, even though it is very capable in Chimera. I just somehow whiffed it. In Chimera, I could have probably set up a better board knowing I was playing against Branded. My board was easily dead to a normal summon Albaz, and I should have expected that because I've done that 1,000 times in Branded. So I should have just dumped a Mirror Sword Knight to be able to dodge Albaz. So yeah, another regional, no invite. I do think I am fully capable of doing it. I am just making bad misplays, but unfortunately in round 7, in a game that probably could have been winnable, my deck was just very unkind. But I could have still played better in game 1, even if my hand was unkind. Game 3 was impossible. I will just go as far as say game 3 was impossible, having too many pieces of the Edgent package, which, by the way, I'm sick of that package. At the first earliest convenience, I will be cutting it. But enough of that. Let's just jump on over to the deck list. Alright, so the deck list hasn't changed a whole lot since the last Chimera video, but we are running 3 Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. I've moved it up to 3 Droll and Lockbird to make 1 extra slot available in the side deck, but also Droll's just really good in this format. We have the 3 Infinite Impermanence, and that is it for the non-engine. We are running, of course, 2 Bestials, which you could consider non-engine if you would like. I decided to cut 1 Bestial. There are just scenarios where you don't want to see a Bestial in your hand, or you just see too much non-engine, so you don't want to see a Bestial to add on to that. But Bestials are really good against Yubel specifically, but also it could out a Gimmick Puppet, or even Gimmick Puppet FTK, which is still alive. So Bestials are still very valuable, not to mention Fiendsmith. We have 2 Baphomet, 3 Coatl, 1 Diabells, 2 Edgem Chain. Like I said, I really want to cut this package. I think it adds a lot to the deck. It adds a lot of gas, but also its brick potential is really high. So I'm just sick of it. The engine almost feels like a high risk, high reward scenario, but we are running the Evil Hero package. So a Dusted Gold, Sinister Necrom, Dark Fusion. We then are running the Fiendsmith engine, 1 Lurie, 2 Engraver, 1 Tract. 3 Gazelle. I am main decking Wengu. Wengu is just insane against Yubel. They don't really have a way to out this because they can't stick monsters on the board long enough for this to get outed. So if you just normal summon this on a Yubel player, if they don't have Droplet or Imperm, they're not really outing it. I am then running only 2 Mirror Sword Knight. I've changed the ratio with Sword Knight and Apprentice. Apprentice being a level 6 allows us to make Lars a lot better, but also just Apprentice is a 1-card combo for the deck, plays a little bit more into Droll, but Sword Knight, just, you don't really want to normal summon this, because if they ash it, then you just use your normal summon in a deck that needs its normal summon. There are ways to, of course, still play around that, but Sword Knight just at 2 feels a lot better, because you don't want it conflicting with the normal summon of him or Gazelle, where Gazelle can just get you straight gas into the deck. Whereas Sword Knight can get ashed, or the monster that comes out can get mournered, whereas like normal summon Gazelle, he can't get mournered, so there's that. We are running the 1 Called By, the only answer really in the deck that we have for Shifter, but we still have to see it. 3 Chimera Fusion, 1 Foolish Burial. If you just lead with this and dump the Necrom, you have full Fiendsmith combo before the deck even really starts its shenanigans. It's a good bait for Ash Blossom. Just Foolish. Any piece that you're missing out of the graveyard, maybe you need an extra light fiend, or you need Mirror Sword Knight or Coatl into the graveyard so you can actually try to resolve some of your effects. We have Fright for Patchwork at 3, 2 Poly, and 3 Imperm. For the extra deck, we are running 1 Aerial Eater, 2 Baphomet, 1 Chimera Illusion Beast, 1 Chimera Phantom Beast, 1 Guardian Chimera, 1 Magnum Reliever, and 1 Necroquip. Necroquip and Aerial Leader, of course, are for Fiendsmith shenanigans. Baphomet is the most flexible card on the deck, meaning that just any combination of hands can usually make it, keyword being usually. Illusion Beast is our OTK strategy. This is what allows us to not have to break an entire board, but only have to crack like half a board, expend the effects that could out this. The Hand Rip, which can punish a lot of decks that are trying to hand trap us. If we can play through those hand traps and then further punish, we are just eating their entire hand. Guardian Chimera, you can play this at 2 if you can find space for it. I don't find the need for it, but you could still, of course, do it. Magnum the Reliever, just... it's draw, it's a light fiend, so you can equip it with, you can equip sequence with it. You can just go into Fiendsmith combo off of this if you have no other way to get there. Necroquip, we can draw cards in several different ways with this. If you activate Engraver effect when this is on the board to search for Tract, you can draw a card. If you activate Coatl, you can draw a card. This just has a lot more utility than just a normal, level 6 go into Caesar har shenanigans. Chaos Angel, there's 1,000 different ways we can make this. Caesar, it's super easy to make this. Usually, the name of the game for the Fiendsmith engine is to turbo out Caesar as quick as possible, which is usually summon 6. So either you're forcing them to use an early nib or not use nib at all, which actually happened 3 different times at this regional. I summoned Nibiru and they just went, oh, I wasn't expecting you to summon him so early, and then later find out they had nib in hand, so they held it too long and we punished them for it. Name of the game is just Turbo Out Caesar, so we can further continue with our plays. We have Lars, which I only made once, and it actually was enough. I made it against one of the Tempai players to negate the field spell, so they could not just be immune to other effects early, like for the rest of the turn on their Fire Dragons. We then, of course, have Requiem, Sequence, and Muckraker. The 1 card, and I was really avoiding showing this to everybody until after this regional because I was hoping to, of course, top at this regional, and I had the ability to do so if I just played better. Knightmare Gryphon. Knightmare Gryphon is super easy to make in this deck. You can end on boards with Highwave King Caesar, Muckraker pointing down, and the Knightmare Gryphon under the Muckraker pointing at Caesar and the zone to its right. Not every hand can do it, but also there's a cool application where if you just make an early Knightmare Gryphon, then fuse it away because it is a fiend, you can just use Chimera in the graveyard to special summon it back from the graveyard in any zone that you want it in, so that way it's not pointing at stuff that your opponent can utilize. So there are other applications that you don't have to use all the bodies to make Muckraker and Caesar to get this onto the board. Not to mention, if you expend all your Chimera Fusions, you can use Gryphon to just reset it from the graveyard. You can also just reset your Imperms if you had to discard it early in the turn. You can reset Called By again if you had to discard it early in the turn. Like, Gryphon's just really good. Not to mention, it's a light fiend. Don't know when that would come up, but you could technically use it to shuffle it back with Engraver's Effect or Sequence, and then maybe resummon it again later in the duel if absolutely needed. But the cool thing about Gryphon is that your opponent's going to have to expend an X amount of resources to out it to begin with. So you're already kind of in a winning position if it hits the board. But if you can get it to hit the board a second time in a better position, or if you can just negate everything that is actually allowed to be used in the zone that it points to, then more power to you. It's kind of a win more strategy. I didn't actually end up getting this on the board once during the regional. It wasn't that I couldn't do it, it just didn't feel like the most optimal play. Side deck was Spooky Dogwood, Dark Statue, 3 Nib, the Forbidden Droplet, board breakers like Duster and Lightning Storm, and 2 Talents. We actually ended up siding almost every card from this side deck at least once, minus the Dark Statue. A big issue that I usually have at regionals is that I always have a card in the side deck that I never end up siding in and find out it was just a waste and I could have put something better in there. Every card except for Dark Statue got used at least once at this regional. Dark Statue, I just don't think it's the format for it. I'm going to cut this card. We have Wangu, which is good against Yubel specifically. Dark Statue is like, a lot of people say it's good against Tempai, but like, if they just normal summon Pydra search Kaiman, and then they Pydra swing over the barrier statue, and then activate Kaiman to continue the rest of their plays, then this quintessentially did nothing. You could theoretically put it back on the board with the Chimera effect, but I just don't think it's all that great. But that is all I have for you guys for this regional recap video. It was a little shorter than normal ones because I really just wanted to talk about the losses and like what I could have done better, because this regional was like a very free regional. I started out very strong and I just dropped it at the end, and I'm learning still. I'm learning from my mistakes, and I think talking about what you could have done better helps you grow as a player. I don't know if I'm going to actually be at another regional before Rage of the Abyss drops, which is unfortunate because I would like to do that before Azamina comes out. There is another regional in my area about 4 hours away in 2 weeks. I just don't think I'm going to be able to have the money nor the time off for work to be able to get away with it. But we'll see. But I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like on the video and comment down below anything relevant to the video. But also, don't forget to leave a subscribe on the channel if you're not already and you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content, so I can continue to make videos like this one. But with that, I'll see you all in the next one. See ya!